Hello, my name is Sally Rackard, and I am very new to this sort of thing, but I thought it would be a lovely idea to record chapters of my late father's book, No Hurling at the Dairy Door. My father was a very well known hurler in Ireland in the 1950s, and he and his brothers won 3 All-Ireland hurling finals for Wexford. My father then went on to uh, bring up his family. I'm one of his 4 daughters, and I am the oldest one. And I am just wanting to honour my dad's memory and preserve some of these lovely stories. They're stories that he wrote about growing up in Wexford, in the little village really of Rathnewer, and how he and his brothers came to prominence in the world of hurling, which in the 1940s and 50s at that time was an all consuming and greatly loved sport and still is in Ireland. So I thought I would do his memory honour and I would read the book. So the book is called No Hurling at the Dairy Door. No Hurling at the Dairy Door. It was published in 1996 by Blackwater Press. The publisher Blackwater Press is no longer in existence, although there is another publisher with the identical name, but they didn't publish this book. The copyright belongs to myself and my 2 sisters, so we are free to share this with you, uh, asserting our ownership of the copyright essentially. But here we are, and here goes nothing. I just want to give it a go. So I'm going to try and record each chapter as one video without any edits. You're probably laughing to yourself as I say that, but anyway, I'm going to give it a try. And as I say, these are lovely, gentle stories of rural Ireland and things that have now long gone. But there are 1 or 2 people that even I remember in this book. So, and it is a fun read, as you would say. Okay, be lovely if you stick with me, and if you have any comments at all, be delighted to hear from you. Okay, no hurling at the dairy door. Dedicated to the memory of my parents. Chapter 1. It was a bracing spring morning in the year of 1895. The Wexford-Dublin train came to a halt at Enniscorthy station. As it did so, its brakes screeched as steel rubbed fiercely against steel. Steam hissed from the train's underbelly, and the people waiting on the platform took a step or so backwards. One of the passengers, Bob, an auburn curly-haired youth, looked sad and apprehensive as he stood there. It was a big step for him, leaving his father's farm to go to Dublin and try his hand at the bar trade. With a heavy heart, he placed his few belongings on the rack overhead. As the train started to move, the door was suddenly yanked open and an excited young couple almost fell into the carriage. Putting their suitcases to one side, they proceeded to lean out the window, waving goodbye to their friends. Eventually, they sat down, still holding hands and exchanging furtive glances with their shy travelling companion. Little did that trio realise the hand that fate was to play in their future. The happy couple were James and Esther Doran, who were setting off on their honeymoon. They were not to know that their companion on the train that day, Bob Rackard, was to marry their firstborn child, Anastasia, 23 years later. Bob and Anastasia were to have 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls. I was the youngest boy. The young Bob Brackard became a popular and reliable barman, working in several different city hostelries and finally raising sufficient collateral to make a strong bid for a public house in Black Rock. The year was 1904. Many years later, whenever we travelled to Dublin with him, we would always go through Black Rock. Slowing the car to almost a crawl, he would point at the pub. "See there," he would say, "I don't know who your mother would have been and what you would have looked like, but if I had bid £10 more for that pub, that is where you would have grown up." He always said the same thing. Every time we approached Black Rock, we would exchange knowing winks as the pub came into sight. Bob Brackard could have bid the extra £10, but there was a little voice inside him telling him to stop. He knew that just a few miles from where he was born back in County Wexford, a good property more suitable to his needs was coming up for sale. It was a fine old pub with a grocery business and approximately 120 acres of land. It was being sold by the Hickey family and was the original homestead of the 1798 hero John Kelly, alias the Boy from Killarn. The young Rackard was a born stockman. He had a deep love of the land. He was also a good judge of horses, a talent he has put to good use and substantial financial gain through buying and selling, especially what were known as troopers, a type of horse that was in big demand in that period. A few minutes was all he needed with a horse to tell you its defects. He quickly went to work. He was immediately a success at both the business and farming, and inside a short period carried out extensive refurbishments to the old house, which included a new slate roof. Prior to this, the house was deemed by some to be the longest thatched dwelling in the county. With the success of the business, he quickly added other parcels of land to his already considerable acreage. For someone with a modest education in such a remote area, he surprised a lot of his friends by his intuition and daring in speculating successfully on the stock market. In the early 30s, he was to invest again. This time, he purchased another pub with a farm attached about 3 miles away in the neighbouring townland of Came, a property which is now owned by my brother John. His financial success was to offer him a good lifestyle, enjoying his bachelor status to the full. He was the proud owner of a splendid motor car, which in those days was a real public declaration of financial well-being. Had his future wife, who was only about 7 years old when he took over Killarn, remained where she was born in Glenglass, she and her family would have become customers in his new shop. But fate again intervened. Her mother, my grandmother, the former Esther Ann Keating, inherited a substantial house and farm in the neighbouring parish of Davidstown. Consequently, the first time that Bob set eyes on Anastasia, he was 35 and she was 18. I often heard it said that my mother and her sister Molly were two of the finest girls ever to leave the parish of Davidstown. They stood an imposing 5 feet 11 inches with beautiful dark hair and each endowed with a good figure. In addition, they had a good full secondary school education at the Loreto Convent, Gorey, and there was no doubt that they were fancied by a lot of young men. I'm just checking the time here. He meets his match. It was the autumn of 1914. Bob's two sisters, who were helping him to keep house, decided they should give a party. "Ask whoever you like," encouraged their brother in an expansive mood. "What about those Doran girls over in Money Hall?" suggested one. "A bit young," said Bob, "but ask them anyway." When the party was in full swing, his sister tapped him on the shoulder. Bob, she said, I want you to meet Stacia Doran.